Hey team, when you are looking to buy a small business, sometimes it's unclear, what fees the buyer is responsible for, if there's a buy-side advisor who pays them and all of this sort of stuff. So in this video, we are going to break down all of the fees that go into a small business transaction, who's responsible for what, and just help you navigate this better and, potentially save yourself from fees that you don't necessarily have to pay. My name is Walker Diable. I am the Wall Street Journal bestselling author of Buy Then Build and creator of Acquisition Lab. So listen, I've been inside 100 deals. I've bought 8 companies outright. I've had a few exits, and I've been around this space for almost 2 full decades. And I just remember when I first was getting started that I wasn't clear. Are these brokers? Are they paid in the same way that real estate agents are? And maybe I have a buy side advisor and they have a sell side advisor, and they split the fees, or what exactly is going on? And I remember I was brokering a deal 2-3 years ago where the buyer showed up with a buy-side advisor, and it almost actually cost him the deal because I was being expected to share the fees that I was earning from the seller, and that was not something that I was open to in that situation, but many brokers are. And how do we sort of discern that, right? So let's kind of start to break down how these fees get set up, and then we'll kind of go from there. Okay, so first and foremost, all business transaction fees, all business broker, M&A advisory, investment banker fees are all based on a percentage of the transaction amount. Okay, and it was actually the Lehman Brothers that came out and said, "Hey, I'm going to go ahead and take on some of these little sub $100 million deals. How do I think about charging fees on them, right?" And so they came up with what's called the Lehman formula. Okay, and the standard Lehman Brothers formula is you take the first $1 million, okay, and you charge 10% on that first million. Then you take the second $1 million, okay, million, and you charge 8%, okay. That's a terrible 8, sorry. And then you got the third million, okay, it goes to 6%, okay. And then after that, you've got you drop down to 4, and then it's 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. So this would be 4 million, and then 5 million, and every subsequent million flat lines at 2, okay, 2%. When you are doing a $1, $2, $3 million deal, this is, very important. But the truth is the Lehman Brothers and all of the middle market advisors and investment banks, they're not hanging out in, SMB land, right? So, small deal for them, is definitely 25 million, but, more like 50 to 100 million is sort of like a small middle market deal, mid-sized middle market deal, okay? So they're doing a lot of these 50 to 100 million. If you look at this recipe from the Lehman Brothers, this is, they're essentially going to be a blend of, anywhere north of, 25 to 100 million. It's going to be between 2 and 3%, right? It's just not a meaningful amount unless the deal is really, really small. So all of the things are you hear these investment banks, and middle market firms, they charge 2% on their fees or 2.5% on their fees. Sometimes they just make it easy, but this is the anchor. This is what it's all based on fundamentally. Now, who pays this? Okay. The seller is the person in all of these instances that actually engages the advisor, okay, whatever that looks like. And so that intermediary, that advisor, is being paid 100% by the seller, and they have a responsibility to represent the seller in a transaction, okay? So you might find a business broker that's working really well with you, but always keep in mind, that they were originally hired by the seller, and, they do have an incentive to get the highest price on the transaction, okay? So, but that being said, let's take this little sidecar for a second. That being said, the thing is that if like a real estate agent, okay, if an advisor can get a deal done for $1.5 million versus, not getting a deal done at 1.6, they're going to go to the 1.5. How hard are they going to try to get that 1.6 million? Well, it's sort of like if you really look at it, the advisor is going to be getting, maybe $1,000 or $2,000, $3,000 on that extra 100,000. Okay, it's just not a meaningful amount of money once you start splitting it up with the firm and all of the other things. So it's important to understand that a lot of these advisors, they do represent the seller in almost every single case, but it's also important to understand that everyone would rather get a deal done than not get a deal done. Okay, so I'm just going to throw that out there. Now, in a situation, first I'm going to introduce the modern Lehman, then I'm going to come back to the buy-side advisor. So what happens is that, a lot of established firms, they start to use the Lehman formula, and then what happens is they realize that, if you're doing a lot of, $3, $4, $5 million deals, okay, and this becomes your sort of bread and butter, this drops off extremely fast to the point that you begin to get tempted to only do these deals, because as you start to stretch in size in the small, this is big for micro. These deals at 1 to 3 are much easier to do, whereas these can become significantly harder, sometimes starting to bring in private equity and things like that. And so, what happens is, there's something called the modern Lehman, and the modern Lehman is, what I charge when I work with Quiet Light and whatever. And it's based on this, but ultimately it's, 10% on the first million. And then instead of dropping to 8, it's 9% on the second, 8% on the third, 7, 6, 5, 4. And then we typically will floor out at about 4% rather than 2% because we're working in the sub $25 million marketplace. Okay. So when you're doing large, small deals, the modern Lehman starts to come into play because the drop off is just so significant that the opportunity cost for the amount of time that you're going to spend becomes, exponentially more difficult. Now, all that being said, all of this is charged by the advisor to the seller, right? So what does the buyer pay? Okay. Well, look, if a buy-side advisor, okay, a buy-side person is hired by a buyer, okay, typically that their customer base, they were formed to basically be deal, bloodhounds for private equity firms. So typically it's a $5,000 retainer paid monthly. This is the most common fee I've seen. It's probably increased, with inflation and stuff for the last few years, but it's $5,000 a month. And then it's ultimately working towards, a sort of like double Lehman total fee, but it's based on getting a deal done, okay? And that being said, that is 100% due paid by the buyer to a buy-side broker. Now, the buy-side broker or buy-side advisor in this case is usually going out and looking for off-market deals that are not represented by a seller, okay? Now, this is kind of the Wild West. There's a lot of bumping around. There's no one way to do things, right? But the thing is that if you go to most advisors out there in the United States and say, listen, I've engaged a buy-side advisor, they're looking for me, the buy-side advisor might approach the sell side and say, listen, can we work out a deal on, splitting the fee or, giving me a referral for the buyer or whatever it is. And they can usually work it out. Okay. They usually work it out. Those fees can be, they range a lot. So let's not get into that here. And it technically wouldn't be any of our business as long as they're able to work it out. The question is, are they going to be able to work it out or not? Okay. So when you have a thin market, like for example, I have a, a distribution company for modular office setups inside, cubicle setups inside offices. And it's based in, Kansas City, and all of the customer base is, within 90 minutes of that, facility where everyone goes to work and whatever. It's a certain size. There's, it's not necessarily a strategic buyer. It's in the micro market. So it doesn't have EBITDA robust enough to, necessarily attract private equity and, get the institutions coming in and willing to relocate. That broker is dealing with a pretty thin market, right? And so they put a sim together, they go out and they're trying to sell this business. And ultimately, if you can bring someone to the table that will help them get a deal done, that broker is going to be very willing, to pay a buy-side advisor fee should one already be engaged, okay, by the buyer. Now, when I work at Quiet Light, we spend, there was one instance where I was not at home for over 100 days. And my wife reminded me of that. Other than the weekends, it was 100 business days. Like I was out at every single conference, I'm on stages, I'm writing books, I'm doing all the things. And we're sort of like, bringing together tens of thousands of buyers that are always looking for the types of businesses that we're selling. And by doing that, we're able to put a package together and go to market. And because we put in all of the hard work for years and years and years to build up, that buyer community, when we take a deal out, we typically get 2, 3, 4 offers on average on that one deal. Okay, so if a business broker, buy-side advisor comes to me and says, hey, I want a piece of your fee, I'm gonna say, no thanks, I already did all that work, right? Footnote, I did not write, buy, then build when I worked at Quiet Light. I did it when I was, buying companies, which I'm still doing. Okay, so that brings me to the business broker is either gonna do it or not, okay? And if not, then if you've hired that buy-side advisor, that fee for that buy-side advisor goes back to you as the buyer, okay? And then you become responsible for it. Now, the seller is responsible for the broker fee on the sell side, and then you would become responsible for the broker fee on the buy side. Now, it's important to understand like what a buy-side broker actually does, right? Typically, it's all about deal flow and going out to find, whatever. You would not hire a buy-side broker and pay them a double Lehman to like talk to you when you already have your deal, right? There's already a broker involved. There's already a broker trying to get the deal closed. They're running the ball. They're coordinating all the things. So like, why would you add a double expense, okay? Okay, so that being said, it's one of these where when you look at, my friend Clint is starting a business where, the buyer pays all of the sell side fees, all of the broker fees, right? And the concept here, and I've seen other people do it, and the concept here is that they're claiming, listen, the buyer's already paying it, because if that buyer's coming in and paying $3 million for a business, it's worked into the price when we go to market, okay? I think that's yet to be seen. I think it's a good theory, but it's sort of like, if the buyer is paying the fee, will that, depress, the sales price then, which would be the theory? But like in a competitive situation, I would think that they'd say, look, I'll still pay, the ask price, but I'll pay the broker fee on top of it. We'll see what happens, right? But the concept here is that the buyer is already paying the seller's fee anyway. And I think this is important to understand, because what's happening is that no one is getting paid until the buyer closes the deal. If you really think about it, okay? Who gets paid when the buyer closes the deal? 1, the seller. They get paid. They get their exit. 2, the broker. That broker is getting paid when that deal gets done. Usually there's very little, overhead, flat retainer fees along the way. Usually it's, 80 to 100% at closing, regardless of the size of the transaction, okay? 3, the banker is getting the deal closed because you're getting a loan, so the banker is getting paid, okay? So it's just where we got the seller, the broker, the banker, okay? And even the buyer's attorney is gonna get paid, and the seller's attorney is gonna get paid with those dollars. But if a deal doesn't get closed, it's always important to understand the lawyer is the only one not contingent on a deal closing. And, I'll let you think about their incentives and whatnot, but that's, they don't have an incentive to get a deal closed. Their incentive is, protection and all the rest of it. And I think that's where a lot of undercurrents come in deals at times. Some lawyers are fantastic at trying to get deals done. So there you have it. I mean, basically everyone gets paid when the deal gets closed, and everyone's getting paid, with money that's coming out of, ultimately the buyer, right? So who in a deal with a broker, with a seller, with a banker, and, 2 attorneys, who in the deal is actually looking out for the buyer? Really no one, okay? Everyone's incentivized to get the deal done, but no one really has the back. Maybe you hire a diligence company, okay, and that diligence company is doing diligence, but at the end of the day, they don't really care. They're not representing you. They're usually not jumping in and trying to negotiate, terms. They're simply reporting back to you, right? So this is actually one of the reasons why, after writing Buy Then Build, I started Acquisition Lab. Okay, I thought to myself, look, if this class were taught for, self-funded searchers at Harvard, which it is, but for search funds, but if this class were, we're anchored around a Y Combinator that helps people get businesses actually closed, but representing the buyer with no economic interest, what would that look like? So we anchored in world-class education. I taught a couple semesters, at a ranked university and introduced acquisition entrepreneurship there. Hired a curriculum designer, ran the cohorts, 12, 13, 14 times live, reiterated all the content, brought on 14 advisors, brought on an IO psychologist and other people, and we built out buyer profile, all of these things, okay, that help buyers communicate with brokers, help them get to the deals faster, help get them the tools and the resources that they need, as well as the approach and common language. And we have the largest vetted community of active buyers right now. Every single year, our buyers close 100 million in transaction value. This will be the fourth year that actually happens. I'm very proud of it. 35% of our members have closed on a business. And, so we focus on percent closed and, close ratio, and also reviews. And those are our metrics that we use. We don't go for size, even at the expense of our own revenue. We do not invest in our members' companies. We do not take equity. We do not take fees. And we provide all of this lifetime access for less than 2 months of a buy-side advisor. That's the goal. That's why we created Acquisition Lab. We'll see you on the inside.